So good morning, everybody. My name's Roscoe Neil. I work over in Strategic Communications in the Video and Creative Media department. And I'm going to be giving you a run through Adobe Premiere Pro, which is a video editing software that we use pretty much on the daily. I've been teaching this software since 2013. I've not done it for a couple of years, so just bear with me. But I'm just going to jump straight into it and start sharing my screen. So yeah, for anybody that's never used this software before, I'm going to give you a run through. So you should be confident enough to just jump in there and start getting to know it a little bit more. If this was a driving lesson, I wouldn't expect you by the end of this to be able to jump on the freeway and start driving around at top speed. But you might be confident enough to pull the car off the drive, creep slowly around the neighborhood, and then back onto the drive safely. So without further ado, I'm going to play you a 30-second video that I've put together for the demonstration purposes for this presentation. So I'll play that now.
Need great visuals but don't have time to shoot them? Stock video gives you professional footage at your fingertips. Fast, flexible, and affordable. Bring your stories to life with stock video today. Need great visuals?
So yeah, we use Premiere to mix together video, music, voiceover, sound effects, and other assets to create a story. So today I'll take you through how I created this project, and I will give you lots of little tips and tricks so you'll be confident in getting started with Premiere Pro. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to close this project. And when you open Premiere Pro for the first time, it will look a little something like this. And to get started with a new project, you're going to want to come over to this button up here that says New Project and give that a click. And then I'll just hide all this stuff. So it's then going to bring up this dialog box. And what this is wanting from you is to give it a project name. So for today, I'm going to call this Adobe Presentation. Just zoom in a little bit more so you can see this. And then it's going to ask where you want to store this project. So whenever I get started on a new project, I just want to make sure that in my Finder window, and if you're not using Mac, this will apply to Microsoft as well. So you're just going to want to create a folder somewhere where you can store everything that is related to this project. So I've created this one called Adobe Day, and then I've got a little folder in there called Project, and that's where I'm going to save this project now. So if I click that, choose the location, and it'll ask me where I want to put it. So Project, save it as Adobe Presentation, hit select, and then I can go ahead and click create. And then that's going to open up a window that looks like this. This is a new thing in Premiere over the last couple of years. So to get straight into the actual editing side of things, up here in the top left corner, you've got import, edit, and export, and we're going to want to use the edit window. So once I've hit that, this may be familiar to you or not, but this is what Premiere looks like straight out the box. And I'll go through what each of these windows does for you. So starting in the top left, this is our source window. So this is where we can play back video and audio and make a decision on what part of that clip we want to bring into our edit. Directly opposite that is the program window. And this is everything, this is all your progress. So this is everything that you've put on the timeline and started to edit. And that corresponds to the timeline, which is here. Right now, it's got nothing on it, but anything that you do have on there, when you play it back, it will play up here in this top right-hand window. And then over here in the bottom left-hand corner, this is just the project window. And this is a little bit like a pantry. This is where we're going to store everything that we need. And then we're going to put that onto the stove and in the oven. And that's where you use the timeline. So with nothing in there at the minute, I'm going to show you how we can start bringing stuff in and get started. With Premiere, there are so many ways to do everything. There's shortcuts on the keyboard. There's stuff hidden away in little menus like this. And I could spend all day showing anybody where all the different various ways to do things are. But I'm just going to keep it very simple for this demonstration. And I'm also going to turn on my keyboard casting. So you'll be able to see whenever I do something in the bottom hand corner, you're going to be able to see what keystrokes I'm typing. And that will make it easier for me to explain a couple of shortcuts in this presentation. So with importing, we can either click this button or we can just drag stuff straight in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all the things that are in my project folder that I explained earlier, and we're going to bring that in. So for this, we're going to need some footage, and this is just all the footage that I collected from stock video website. And then we've got graphics, got music, sound effects, and voiceover. So I want to bring all those in. So I'll select all those. And then I can drag that and bring it over, drop it into Premiere, and now it's all over here. And again, you can click through these little bins here, and this is where all my stuff is stored. So as I said earlier, like this is a bit of a pantry. So what we're going to want to do in any pantry is make sure that things are nicely labeled and nicely organized so that it makes cooking and preparing food a lot easier. So what you'll want to do is start creating bins, and that might be a bit confusing. When you're on a Mac or a Windows, things are usually called folders, and in Premiere it's a little bit different. Things are called bins. And that comes from back in the old days when they used to edit on film. All their rolls of film would be stored in bins. So that's just something that translated over into the world of video editing software. So if I hit this little button down here, it looks like a folder and it'll say new bin. So I can click that and you can see that it creates me a bin right here, and I can name that whatever I want. So I'm going to call this my edits. Barrett, when I zoom in, is that translating to the cast?
I have not seen you zoom in yet.
Okay, that's not translating, so apologies for that. Hopefully everybody can see everything clearly.
I can feel it and hear it pretty well.
Okay, great. On my end, I'm zooming into things just so people can get close up, but that's okay. So when we are down here in the project window, this is where we can click on all our stuff and watch it in the source window, which is directly above. So let me demonstrate that for you now. So within the project window, you can have stuff listed like this, just by their text, or you can go to this little icon view button here, click that, and everything is then going to be shown as little thumbnails. So let's just take this clip here. And what I can do is I can press play and watch that now. And within this window, I can scrub forwards, scrub backwards. I've got a lot of control over what I can do. Again, in the bottom left-hand corner, you might be able to see my buttons as I press them. So an easy shortcut to remember for playing footage is spacebar, and you can stop it with the spacebar as well. Also, should just quickly point out that there are a lot of shortcuts on the keyboard, and I'm only going to use a couple, but spacebar is one of them. Another big one is Command and S, and that's going to save my project. So I'm always going to be wanting to save it as regularly as possible. There is also an autosave feature, which is on by default, so any progress that you do make won't be lost. And then there's also Command Z as well. So anything that I do, I can immediately undo it by hitting Command and Z, because this is trial and error. There are going to be a lot of mistakes and a lot of things that we may think that we want to do, but then we want to go back and change it to do something different. So let's get started making some editing. So making some edits, sorry. So we've got this bin here, call it my edits. And the first place that I usually start is by picking the music that I want. So I picked out this piece of music here, and if I double click it, it's going to be there in my source window. And what you can see there are audio waveforms. So this is just a visual representation of loudness on a music track. So if I hit play, you'll be able to hear it. Now I've already listened to the track and I already know that the bit I want is around here. So to select that, I'm going to play it. And the music drops right there, and that's going to be important for our edit because I'm wanting to create some energy. So if I use my arrow keys, I can scribble along and find the perfect point. And I think I found it. So I'm going to use an in point, which I can use the I button to create me an in point. And you can see there that here there is an in point. And that means that this is where I'm selecting this clip to start from, so I can move it onto my timeline. And then an out point is going to do the exact same thing. So I've got that, and now I need to put it somewhere. So we'll create a sequence. So to create a sequence, come down to this bottom right-hand corner of the project window and hit New Item, and hit New Sequence. Some stuff is going to look really complicated, and I just want to make it as simple as I can for you. So the only things that we want to do are change our frame rate to around 24 frames per second. That's the standard in the United States. And then 1920 by 1080. So the frame size is going to be 1920 by 1080. And the chances are, whenever you watch something on YouTube, that's the frame size of that video. You can create vertical, you can create 4K. It all depends on what you're wanting to create. But for this, we'll just stick with 1080p. Again, sequence names, let's call this my edit. Hit OK, and now you can see that the timeline looks a little bit different. So I can now take this clip that I selected and bring it down here. So I'm going to do that by hitting this little drag audio only down onto the timeline. And now that specific portion will play when I play this side. Now I need some footage to work with, so let's have a look at some footage. So I'm going to start off with this lady with her camera. So let's have a watch of it. And just when her eyes start there, that's where I want my in point. So hit I, play along, and let's say about there, that's where I want to end that shot. And now I can hit this drag video only, click and press and drag it down. And if I go down to my timeline now, that clip is on the timeline. So there are a couple of different tools that you can use on the timeline. The one that I'm using now is the arrow tool. And this little column here shows you what tool you're using. So the arrow button is a lot like a cursor that you would use just on your desktop. So I can click a piece of footage, I can drag it around, move it up and down, and I can right click, and that gives me lots of other options. And then there's a razor tool. So a razor tool does what it says on the tin, basically. So you're going to be able to take that, click on anything on the timeline that's a clip, and it's going to create a little cut mark in there. And that now becomes its own separate thing. So I might use this in a real world scenario just to cut the end off of this clip because I don't want it anymore. So I can select that by using the C button on my keyboard, pressing that around there, go back to my arrow tool, and I can now select that end portion, hit backspace, and it's gone. One more thing just to show you on that. There's also a feature called trim, which we're going to be using quite a lot in this process. So let's say if I regret that decision of getting rid of that end portion of the clip, if I hover around the end portion, it comes up with this little red arrow. And if I click and drag, that's now bringing that back into play. So what I'd lost, I can now put back in. And then let's bring up another clip so you can see the magic of editing in full flow. So let's use this guy looking a bit stressed at his laptop. Bring that down. And now you're going to see that all this is starting to take shape. And again, you can click this, move it around, swap these around if that's what your heart desires. I'm going to Command Z that. Okay, so let's add one more clip into there. Let's grab this guy walking through the mountains. In point, out point, drag, drop onto the timeline. And now we're going to want to start bringing other things into the fold to make this more interesting. So we've got this voiceover.
Need great visuals but don't have time to shoot them? Stock video.
I can drag this onto the timeline underneath the music here. And those things are going to play at the exact same time. And it sounds like a bit of a mess because the volume levels aren't balanced yet. So a quick way to do that is to look in the middle of this clip and there's a little white line. And if you click and drag that, you can see that the decibel levels are going up and down. So I'm going to bring that down to, let's say, -14.
Don't have time to shoot them? Stock video gives you professional.
That's sounding better, but I now just want to bring up the levels of my voiceover. So you can see the waveforms are starting to get more visible there, which means that they're louder.
Footage at your fingertips. Fast, flexible, and affordable.
Okay, the music, we want that to drop right after she says her last line, which
Bring
is...
your stories to life with stock video today.
And we selected the in point. So the start of this music is where it drops. And I can use that trim tool now to extend that music clip and have it over the start of the timeline, which will now sound like this.
Need great visuals but don't have time to shoot them? Stock video gives you professional footage at your fingertips. Fast, flexible, and affordable. Bring your stories to life with stock video today.
You can see it really gives us that energy when the music drops just after her voiceover ends. I'm going to bring up my completed project now. So this was our final product here. But there's a couple of things that I want to make sure that I fit in before the end of this presentation. So I'm going to talk to you about crossfading. So let's just say, in fact, scratch that. I'm going to go to scale and position. So you can see that this clip here, there's a little black border at the top and the bottom. And that just means that the clip that we've got on the timeline is a little bit smaller. It's a little bit smaller. Somebody's microphone's on. Do you mind just turning that off? That's a little distracting.
I took care of it.
Appreciate it. So as I was saying, that clip is slightly smaller than our timeline. So we can just zoom into that clip a little bit. And what you do is you make sure that the clip is selected. So it's this one here. So if I click that and then go up to Effect Controls, that's going to let me have a little bit more creativity with where that image is on the screen. So if I come up to scale, it's at 100 right now. I can click and drag that, and you can see that when I move that around, I can zoom in and out. And I just want to get rid of those black bars, so that should be enough. And then I can also change the position if I wanted. So left and right, up and down. Now I'm going to show you the crossfade. So this clip as well, you can see that that's got some borders at the edge. So let me just quickly take care of that. Zoom in a little. So this is the last clip on the timeline. And what I want to happen is I want this clip on screen to slowly fade out and then reveal the logo, which is here. Currently, there's a hard cut in there, which will look like this. It's a little bit too severe, so we're going to take care of that now. If you look at the top of your project window, there are lots of different menus up here. A lot of them day-to-day I'll never use, but the effects panel is something that I'll use pretty often. And in here, there's a ton of different effects that can do different things to your clips and audio. So the quickest way to navigate with what you want is to search it. And I want a cross dissolve. So once I find that, click on it and drag it over, I've now added that cross dissolve to the end of that clip. And if I click and pull around like I was the trim tool, you can extend how soft or how fast you want that transition to be. But this is going to look pretty good, so I'll show you that. And again, as I mentioned earlier, when you're building an edit, you want to make it as dynamic as possible. I'm going to play you a clip now. It's the man underwater. And I wanted to add in there a sound of somebody underwater. So it just really sells that image and really creates that vibrant atmosphere. Down on the timeline, again, there's a lot of buttons here that look a little bit complicated, but I just want to point out the M and the S, and that stands for mute and solo. So if I mute this track, which has my voiceover on it, that's gonna temporarily stop any voiceover coming out, and I can do the same with the music as well. So now if I play it back, it's just going to be sound effects. So it's a balancing game of how loud you want things to play to the audience. So if I come down now, as I mentioned, you can click and drag on the timeline to create the right output of sound to manipulate the levels. So I'll bring this up. Far too loud. I want that to sit below the music and the voiceovers, just so it's subtle enough that you can hear it, but it's not overpowering. But also, when I did the crossfade on the video, you can do that on the audio too, so that it gently comes in and then gently goes out, because otherwise it's going to do something like this, which doesn't sound right. It just stops and it starts. So I can take care of that by visiting the end of each of these ends of that clip, and there's a little gray box that appears, and if I can click and drag that, it will gently bring in the audio and gently have it go out again. I think I've got time to show you one more thing, so let me do that now. An easy way to add text is you can press the T button, and that's going to bring up a little type window. So let's say on this clip, I want to write baseball. And that then creates me another asset on the timeline that I can then extend so it covers that clip. Obviously that doesn't look great, so let's dive in there and try and change that a little bit. So if I double click that, it will allow me to have a little bit more control over the text, and I can change the font. I can change the color by clicking here. Let's make that a little bit bigger. And then obviously we want things centered. So we can use the arrow tool. So we'll select that, click it, and we can drag it around, and we could just guess where the middle is. But if you hold Command, Premiere will bring up this nifty little tool which allows you to see when it's exactly in the center. So now you'll have some text over your clip as well. So we've got the finished edit, and once we're done, the timeline will look a little bit more like this. It's just a colorful nightmare of little squares which all correspond to video and audio. And you're going to then want to export this from the software and make sure that you can share it with the world. So I'll show you how to do that. You can come up here to File, Export, and we're going to export that as media. It brings up this window here, and here we can name it. So I'm going to call it my finished edit, and I'm going to send that to my Adobe Day folder in the exports, and it's going to be called finished edit. And there are multiple different flavors of exports for all different types of things, but the majority of stuff that you see online is going to be H.264. And I don't want to make things too complicated, but that just means that it's going to be small enough to play back on people's phones and not take up too much of their internet connection. So if you hit export, Premiere is then going to do its thing, take a couple of seconds. And it's done. So I can come over here to where I sent it to go. My finished edit.
Need great visuals but don't have time to shoot them? Stock video gives you professional footage at your fingertips. Fast, flexible, and affordable. Bring your stories to life with stock video today.
And there it is, and you can share that with your friends and your family. You can put it on YouTube, you can do what you like with it. I am coming to the end of my time now, so I don't want to run over because I know it's going to be a busy day for you. But yeah, if anyone's got any questions, you can either quickly say them now or fire them over in an email to me.